a blind and traumatized bobcat named Luna was rescued and brought to the Foothill Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. Severely malnourished and blind from infection and trauma, Luna had lost all will to live and faced imminent euthanasia. But Dr. Sarah Mitchell sensed something extraordinary beneath Luna's despair, prompting her to seek an improbable reprieve, a 14-day extension to save Luna's life. Then came Charlie, a gentle border collie with his own heartbreaking past and rapidly deteriorating eyesight. What happens when two souls, each lost in their own darkness, are brought together? Could Charlie become a guide, the eyes and salvation for Luna, a wild creature drowning in despair? Or would this turn into the most dangerous mistake of Dr. Sarah's career? Before we start, hit the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. The air at the Foothill Wildlife Rehabilitation Center always carried a complex perfume of pine cleaner, dry kibble, and the faint wild scent of its temporary residents. It was a place of healing, a revolving door of nature's mishaps and miracles. But on a crisp autumn afternoon, the scent of despair seemed to cling to one enclosure in particular, a small, quiet room in the isolation wing. Inside, a young bobcat was curled into a knot of misery so tight it was hard to tell where the animal began and the shadows ended. They had named her Luna, a poetic choice for a creature whose eyes, sealed shut by infection and trauma, would never again see the moon. She had been found by hikers near a construction site, a skeletal ghost of an animal, her fur matted with burrs and dirt. She was blind, starving, and had emotionally slammed a door on the world. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the sense lead veterinarian, stood before the enclosure, her brow furrowed with a familiar mix of professional concern and personal heartache. She had seen countless animals in dire straits, but Luna was different. It wasn't just the physical ailments, the severe malnourishment, the raging infection that had stolen her sight, the network of scars that spoke of a brutal, solitary struggle for survival. It was the profound absence of will. Luna was a void. She refused food, recoiling from the scent of fresh meat, as if it were poison. She flinched away from the softest touch, the gentlest voice. For 3 days she hadn't moved from her corner, her body a rigid testament to her suffering. Her head remained tucked, her ears flat, her breathing shallow. She was a wild thing that had decided to die. Her blood work is still grim, said Mark, a seasoned wildlife technician, his voice low as he joined Sarah. Kidney values are through the roof from dehydration. We can keep her on 4 fluids, but if she doesn't eat soon. He didn't need to finish the sentence. They were both staring at the inevitable conclusion. She's given up, Sarah murmured, her gaze fixed on the pathetic bundle of fur. She's been navigating the world in terror and pain for so long. With her eyes closed like that, like 2 tiny crescent moons. Now that she's safe, it's as if she doesn't know what to do with it. The fight is gone. The protocol for an animal in Luna's condition was clear and grim. If a creature showed no will to live, no response to treatment, and was clearly suffering, euthanasia was the most humane option. It was a decision Sarah had made dozens of times, always with a heavy heart, but always with the certainty that it was an act of mercy. The discussion had already begun among the staff. Luna was fading, and prolonging her state felt cruel. But something held Sarah back. In the brief, terrified moments when Luna had been examined upon arrival, Sarah had felt the frantic, thrumming heartbeat. Under her hands, she had seen the delicate, perfect structure of the bobcat's paws, the ghost of the magnificent predator she was meant to be. There was a flicker of something deep within the despair, a life force so thoroughly buried it was almost undetectable. 2 more weeks, Sarah said, turning to Mark, her voice firm. I'm asking for 2 more weeks. Mark's eyebrows shot up. Sarah, that's highly unusual. Her prognosis is. I know what her prognosis is, she interrupted, her tone softening. But I can't shake the feeling that we're missing something. That there's a key we haven't found yet. Please, Mark, log it as a behavioral study. Give me 14 days to try and reach her. If there's no change by then, I won't fight the decision. Mark studied his boss's face, seeing the deep conviction there. He trusted her instincts. They had saved more than one hopeless case before. He gave a slow, reluctant nod. 14 days, but you'll have to document everything. The board will want a full report. Thank you. Sarah breathed, a wave of relief washing over her. She didn't know what she would do in those 2 weeks, but she had bought Luna a little more time. It felt like a monumental victory, even as she watched the bobcat remain utterly still, a silent statue of sorrow. 5 days into Luna's reprieve, a different kind of sadness arrived at the center. It came in the form of a black and white border collie with eyes the color of warm honey and a tail that, despite the circumstances, couldn't quite bring itself to stop wagging. His name was Charlie. Charlie's story was a common one at the adjacent domestic animal shelter that shared resources with the wildlife center. His owner, an elderly gentleman, had passed away and the family couldn't take him in. Charlie was 10 years old, a senior dog whose world had been upended. But his case was complicated by a recent diagnosis: progressive retinal atrophy. The vet's report stated that Charlie's vision was already deteriorating and would eventually fade to black. Yet as he sat in the intake office, Charlie seemed blissfully unaware of the tragedies befalling him. He nudged the hand of every person who walked by, offering a wet nose and a hopeful look. He wasn't grieving in the way a human would. Instead, he was radiating a simple, profound desire for connection. He was a creature of pure, undiluted optimism packaged in a body that was beginning to fail him. Sarah had come over to the shelter to consult on a different case when she first saw him. She watched as a young volunteer sat on the floor, quietly crying over the dog's sad story. Charlie, in response, began licking the tears from her face, his tail thumping a gentle rhythm against the linoleum. An idea, wild and improbable, sparked in Sarah's mind. It was a long shot, crazy, unprofessional leap of faith that went against every rule in the book. Introducing a domestic predator to a wild one, especially one as traumatized as Luna, was unthinkable. It was dangerous. It was illogical. It was perfect. She spent the next 2 days convincing everyone, including herself, that it wasn't a completely insane plan. She argued that Charlie's gentle, non-threatening nature and his own impending blindness might create a unique bridge. He wouldn't see Luna as a wild, fearful creature. He would just sense another being. She pointed out that both animals were suffering from loss and facing a world of darkness. Perhaps they could navigate it together. The director was skeptical. The technicians were horrified. But Sarah's passionate, detailed plan, which involved multiple safeguards and constant supervision, eventually won them over. They agreed to one and only one carefully controlled meeting. The chosen location was a small, quiet playroom stripped of anything that could be used as a weapon or a hiding place, save for a soft blanket in the center. Mark stood by the door with a catchpole, his face a mask of anxiety. Another technician watched from an observation window, ready to intervene. First, they brought in Charlie. He trotted into the room, his tail giving a few inquisitive wags. He sniffed the corners, his paws making soft padding sounds on the floor. He was calm, curious, and completely at ease. Then Sarah carried Luna in, wrapped in a thick towel. The Bobcat was rigid with fear, a low, guttural growl vibrating in her chest. Sarah gently placed her on the far side of the room, unwrapping the towel and backing away slowly. Luna immediately flattened herself to the floor, a tense, coiled spring of terror. The room was silent, safe for the hum of the ventilation. Charlie, on the other side of the room, lifted his head. His ears swiveled, tuning into the faint sound of the Bobcat's breathing. He took a tentative step, then another. His movements were slow, deliberate, and exuded a gentle curiosity, not aggression. Sarah held her breath. Mark's hand tightened on the pole. Charlie didn't approach Luna directly. Instead, he walked in a wide, slow circle, his nose to the ground. He was gathering information, assessing the situation with a canine calm that was astonishing to watch. Luna remained frozen, her ears tracking his every move, her body trembling. Finally, Charlie stopped. He was about 10 feet away from her. He looked at the space where she was, though his failing eyes likely only saw a blurry shape. He stood for a long moment, then, with a soft sigh, he lay down. He didn't face her. He lay parallel to her, tucking his paws under his chest and resting his head on the floor, presenting no threat. It was a gesture of profound, peaceful submission. The seconds stretched into an eternity. The air in the room was thick with unspoken tension. Sarah's heart pounded against her ribs. This was it, the moment of truth. And then it happened. For the first time since she had arrived, Luna moved. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible motion. She lifted her head just an inch. Her sealed eyes were pointed in Charlie's direction. She didn't retreat. She didn't hiss. She simply lifted her head. And in that small gesture, a universe of possibility opened up. She was acknowledging his presence. She was curious. A single tear traced a path down Sarah's cheek. It wasn't a cure. It wasn't a miracle, but it was a start. It was a flicker in the void. That first meeting laid the foundation for one of the most unlikely friendships the center had ever witnessed. The daily sessions in the playroom became the cornerstone of Luna's therapy. Each day, Charlie's quiet, steady presence seemed to chip away at the wall of fear Luna had built around herself. He never rushed her. He developed a language that was all his own. He would announce his entrance with a soft woof, so as not to startle her. He learned to gauge her mood by the tension in the air. On days when she was particularly withdrawn, he would simply lie across the room, a silent, comforting sentinel. Slowly, Luna began to uncurl. She started by moving from her corner to the center of the room, closer to the blanket where Charlie lay. Then one day, Sarah and her team watched, mesmerized, as Charlie gently nudged a small, soft ball with his nose, sending it rolling a few inches toward the Bobcat. Luna flinched, but then her nose twitched. She tentatively reached out a paw and tapped it. It was the first time she had shown any interest in anything other than her own misery. Charlie became her guide to a world she could no longer see. He would walk to the food bowl and make a soft shuffling sound with his paws, a signal that meant, "Food is here." Luna, hesitant at first, began to follow the sound, and for the first time she ate voluntarily, her small, rough tongue lapping at the high-nutrient mush Sarah had prepared. He taught her how to navigate their shared space. If she was heading toward a wall, he would move to block her path, giving a low, gentle rumble in his chest as a warning. She learned to trust his body language, his sounds, his very presence as her map. Her transformation was staggering. The skeletal haunted creature began to fill out. Her coat, brushed daily by a now trusted mark, started to shine. She began to explore her enclosure using Charlie's auditory cues to move with a newfound confidence. One afternoon, Sarah heard a sound she never thought she would hear from Luna. A purr. It was a deep rumbling sound of pure contentment as she lay a few feet from the sleeping dog, the warmth of his body radiating through the space between them. Their bond was a silent, profound conversation. They didn't need a shared verbal language. They communicated through trust, patience, and an innate understanding of each other's needs. Charlie, with his failing eyes, seemed to understand Luna's world of darkness. And Luna, who had never known a gentle touch, found solace in his unwavering companionship. The staff, once skeptical, were now their biggest cheerleaders. They documented every interaction, every milestone. Luna's case was no longer a hopeless one. It was a groundbreaking study in interspecies therapy. News of the blind Bobcat and her guide dog began to spread beyond the walls of the center. A local news station ran a short segment, and from there the story took on a life of its own, shared across social media by thousands of people captivated by their tale. One of the people who saw the story was a woman named Marilyn Linda. Marilyn was a woman in her late 60s with kind eyes, weathered hands, and a heart as big as the sprawling acres of land she owned in the nearby foothills. Her property, named the Sanctuary, was a private refuge for animals that were deemed unadoptable: elderly horses, three-legged goats, and a flock of chickens that had survived a barn fire. Marilyn wasn't just an animal lover. She was a believer in second chances. When she saw the footage of Charlie gently guiding Luna toward a water dish, she felt a pull so strong it was almost a physical force. She saw two souls who had found each other in the dark, and she knew with absolute certainty where they belonged. She called the center the next day. "I'm not looking to adopt just one of them," she said to Sarah, her voice warm and steady. "They come as a pair. They stay as a pair. That is non-negotiable." Sarah felt a surge of hope so powerful it made her dizzy. Finding a permanent home for a healthy bobcat was difficult enough. Finding one for a blind, traumatized bobcat was considered impossible. And to find one that would also take her aging, partially blind canine companion, it was a miracle. Marilyn visited the center the following week. She didn't coo or fuss. She simply sat on the floor of the playroom and watched. She observed the way Charlie would circle Luna, creating a safe perimeter. She saw how Luna in turn would listen for the jingle of his collar, her body relaxing visibly when she knew he was near. "They speak their own language," Marilyn said softly to Sarah, her eyes shining. "My place is quiet. They'll have all the Space they need and they'll never be separated. Over the next month, Marilyn worked with a contractor to build a special enclosure at the sanctuary. It was a large fenced-in area of rolling grass and trees, but with modifications. The ground was kept level and free of unexpected obstacles. A small heated den was built with a wide, ramped entrance. A shallow circulating stream was installed, its gentle gurgling providing a constant auditory landmark. It was a paradise designed for the blind. The day they left the center was emotional for everyone. The entire staff came to say goodbye. Charlie, ever the optimist, hopped into Marilyn's truck with a happy wag of his tail. Luna was more hesitant. She stood at the edge of her carrier, sniffing the unfamiliar air. Her body tense. Charlie, sensing her fear, let out a soft woof. It was his signal for, "It's okay. I'm here." Luna visibly relaxed. She took a breath and stepped into the carrier, ready to follow her friend into the next chapter of their lives. At the sanctuary, Luna and Charlie thrived. The open space, free from the confines and stresses of the rehabilitation center, allowed their bond to deepen even further. They spent their days exploring their wooded enclosure. Charlie's jingle-jangle collar, a constant beacon for Luna. She, in turn, with her superior hearing and sense of smell, would often detect things before he did. A squirrel chattering in a distant tree, the scent of rain on the wind, and would alert him with a soft chuff. Marilyn, touched and inspired by their incredible story, began sharing it with the community. She started hosting small educational events at the sanctuary. Families would come and sit on hay bales, listening as Marilyn told the story of the blind bobcat and her guide dog. They would watch from a safe distance as Luna and Charlie navigated their world together. A living, breathing lesson in empathy and resilience. Their story was so powerful that it sparked an idea. Marilyn, with the help of a few dedicated volunteers, established a new program at her sanctuary specifically for animals with special needs. The idea caught on. Other shelters, inspired by her model, started their own special needs programs, creating a network of hope for animals that might have otherwise been overlooked. A local children's author heard the story and wrote a beautifully illustrated book titled Luna's New Eyes. It became a bestseller, teaching children about kindness, friendship, and the fact that disabilities don't limit one's worth. Marilyn's small private refuge evolved, becoming a renowned sanctuary for animals with disabilities, a beacon of compassion that all started with one broken bobcat and one cheerful dog. Years passed. Charlie grew old, his muzzle turned white and his once energetic trot slowed to a gentle amble. Arthritis settled into his hips, and some days getting up was a struggle. His eyesight, as predicted, had faded completely to black. He was now as blind as his feline friend. And in a beautiful, poignant reversal of roles, Luna adapted again. She had spent years relying on him, and now it was her turn to be the guide. She would stay close to him on his slow walks, nudging him gently away from slopes that were too steep. She would lie beside him for hours, her warm, purring body a comfort against his aching joints. When he was slow to come for dinner, she would walk to their den and call for him with a series of soft, questioning chirps until he emerged. Their journey had come full circle. From the depths of abandonment and despair, they had found not just survival but a profound and unconditional love. They had taught a community and indeed The world that the deepest connections are not based on what we can see but on what we feel. They're silent extraordinary. Friendship born in a quiet room and nurtured under the wide open sky was a testament to the enduring power of empathy and the simple heartwarming truth that sometimes the best way to heal your own brokenness is to help heal another's. And in the quiet twilight of there lives the blind bobcat and her faithful dog could be seen lying side by side, two souls who had found their light in each other's darkness.